JavaScript is a programming language that adds interaction to web pages, basically. Something very important about JavaScript is actually the underlying base rock across almost every language. If you want to write code, whether in PHP or .NET, C Sharp, Python, anyone, JavaScript seem to fit in. You can inject JavaScript into every programming language. All right. So, and the good thing about JavaScript, it's very fast. It runs very fast because it's client side. Client side is the browser. You know, as against the other languages too that are client side, like PHP. All right. But JavaScript, like mentioned, is like the underlying rock on which other languages we are now built on and advanced. Yeah. So that's for JavaScripting. There are a number of things that you need to know about JavaScript and programming generally. That's why I say understanding JavaScript is like a base rock for any other programming language. Okay, because you get to understand what variables are, you get to understand what data types are, you get to understand how to declare a variable and how to use them, or a constant and how to use them. Now, these things are the same across all programming languages. It's just that the way you write it is different, but it's exact same thing. Data types remains the same data types. Declaring of variables is a standard. Declaring of constant is a standard. Okay, so for JavaScripting, the first thing that we'll look at today is to declare a variable. Declaring a variable. A variable is like a container that's holding a value. So if I declare, like in this handout, you see let is a command. All right, let is like initializing the variable to say, okay, let this variable hold this value. Okay, sometimes you might just let the variable, you have not assigned value to it yet. You just get let name, for example. All right, I will do a demo on each of those things so that we can see how they function. All right, so there are variables, and the good thing about variables is they are reusable. You can assign values to variable even within the same code block. It can be done here, and when it's executing, I update it. For example, if I want to print out names of 12 people that are in a class, I declare variable name, and maybe I have an array. An array is like a list of names, okay, a list of names, and I want to iterate through them. All I will need to still do is assign each, I'm going to loop through the array and assign each name to the same variables, and yet is able to accommodate them. While constant is another way of declaring, I don't want to call it a variable now, a container that holds value. Difference between variable and constant is constant don't change. Okay, you see this guy, age 25. In the course of the entire program, you can't update this age. It will remain 25. Okay, that's why it's constant. Right?
Sorry, sir, we can't see your screen. It's your face.
Oh, really? Okay, let me see. Okay, but can you see anything now? Or let me share it.
Yeah, but your laptop screen is smaller.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me share again. Let me see how I can. Is there any change now? But let me see. Okay.
The screen, your laptop screen is where your face used to be, you know.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Currently, in your view, I'm the one showing more on the laptops. The
Yes,
large.
yes, you're the one.
Oh, oh,
Why the screen is very small.
oh. Okay. Thank you. So I need to set that. Is the VS Code showing bigger, or is still my picture that's big there?
Yes, so it's still your face. Yeah, see.
Okay, can you tap on that my laptop screen on your side?
Okay, yes, it's from my end. Yeah, now I can see it.
All
It's
right,
clearer.
okay, all right, all right. So yeah, we are just talking about variables and constants. Okay, since they are the bedrocks for what we want to do. Okay, we have established that JavaScript is a language that allows for interactions on the web page. Okay, so I will come on my project. Now it's still on the same project that we are working on. So right there at the bottom, to introduce JavaScript to your website is also how you have the CSS, the three different ways. Okay, but for JavaScript, you have the internal and the external. So for JavaScript, the internal is what I'm going to demo today. Okay, you start with this tag script just at the bottom before the body closes. Yeah, you can just do script open and script close. Then you can start typing whatever you need to type. Uh, that is a JavaScript. All right, so let me go back to our handout and see. Let's say, for example, let's declare a variable and print something out. All right, so this JavaScript variable, like I said, is a reusable container. All right, and valid names for variables must start with either alphabet or underscore. Even if variable is alphanumeric, it must not start with number. So for example, I want to declare a variable. I can say let something, anything, okay? Either I'm declaring it and saying, okay, I'm just initializing it. I'm not assigning a value to it. Or I can say, oh, let something be equal to, it can be a number or it can be maybe a string, all right? Okay, so a variable can take any value. And in the course of our execution, maybe somewhere along the line, I can let something be equal to Paul. All right. The end of every line, we use semicolon. All right. So this variable can take different values without a problem. Okay. While constant, let's say age, for example, that doesn't change. It's 25. I can't do something like this. Age 30. Again, it will fail. The code base will fail because constant, once it has a value, it can't update. You will run with that value to the end of the code block. Or let me call it the end of the session. Right? Because when a website is rendered or application, anything rendered, what happens is every code block starts from line 1, line 2 execution. Right? So until it executes the full call for 1 before this value can change, this constant. And if it wants to change, maybe you are the one going to change it. All right. So the difference between variables and constants is variables being able to take any value, it can change, while constants remain the same. All right. So back to our note, the first thing that we need to know, aside letting you understand variables or constant, is the data types. Okay, there are a number of data types, but these ones are the popular ones. Strings. String is just a text-based data. All right, like it can be sentence, it can be a long paragraph, it can be a word. Okay, even a number, it can be a number in parentheses. Okay, but for a string, it must be housed, it must be encapsulated with parentheses. Okay, so if I write this 42 in between these parentheses, it's still a valid string. But if I remove these parentheses, it becomes a number. Okay, so the second type of data type is numbers. It's strictly just number, it doesn't take anything. Then there's the Boolean type. Okay, the Boolean is just about true or false. Okay, we use them majorly for conditional statements. So if something is true, execute this. If it's false, do this other one. You know, we'll do conditional statements later on, I hope in the next class. But for this class, we'll just establish the foundation of understanding variables, data types, and then do an interaction where we work with the data types and variables to get a result using JavaScript. Okay. Now, there is also what is called functions. Function is like executing, or rather writing a full block of code, group them together into just one function. All right. So if I want to write a lot of things, I write all of those things in here. For example, I want to do a calculator that's going to calculate like we want to do, that we like we do today. A calculator that wants to calculate value, maybe multiplication. All right. I can write a function where I'll put in all the things that make it work inside here. All right. So this function can be reusable anywhere. All I need to do is just to be calling the function. You see, like what we did with style, all right, the CSS, where you can declare it in a central place without having to write and every element again, just that single place and it replicates. That's the same thing that happens on the JavaScript side. Once you have something that you know that you will need to reuse, no need writing the code directly on the body. Okay, instead you write it as a function so that you can reuse it. A simple function now is greet. Okay, so function alert greet. So this function is just to alert on the browser. Sorry, let me format this properly. Okay. Okay, so function greet. Let me see if it's active on our browser here. Right. So can you see what's happened here? Hello world. So it's like an alert on the browser. So the JavaScript. First, let me also mention that you will see this is the function greet. All right. But this is where I called it. Anywhere I want that greet to happen, okay, across the different pages of the website, I only just need to call this function. All right, it makes my code tidier. Okay, so if I want to do, if I have a long block of code here that involves writing a lot of logic, all right, here I'm not concerned about the logic. Here is just where I execute I make the code execute. So it makes my code like more organized, and everything is inside one block, just like I mentioned for that of CSS. Okay, so a function is just a combination of your code block grouped together, all right, as a single function. So what you want it to execute is what is written inside it. So if you want to do a multiplication, a function that you call, yeah, sorry.
Yes, sir. I was sorry to cut you. I was having issues, challenges with the external part of CSS.
CSS, okay,
So
okay.
yeah, when I have that my details stored in a separate file, I refresh my web page. it doesn't correspond with what I have on the external, page, and I
Yeah,
already have it linked, and the way you said it with the
yeah,
relation and with the of my name that I used to store it on the file, but it still
yeah.
doesn't change the way it's supposed to.
Okay, the element that you want to change, do you have any inline style on it already?
Yes, I already have inline style on it already.
Okay, so usually inline style overrides the external CSS. So if you see the examples that I did the other day, is H2. I didn't put inline style in it. It's the other guys that are using inline style. All right, so if you want to format this case now, this H1, if I write H1 in my external CSS, it will not change because this inline style will override it. So except I delete this inline style, that's when it will now show.
Let me see if I have that in the system.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yes, the first thing that you probably will be learning in JavaScript to execute is the alert feature, which we just did. Okay, even if it is telling someone, "Oh, you are welcome to my website." Okay, alert is a keyword in JavaScript. See the way it's formed. Function is formed by writing the keyword function. You can call this any name that you want to call it. Let me call it my greeting or my welcome alert, whatever you like to call it. Then you open a bracket and close the bracket. Okay, then open and close block, the square bracket. So let's write it again and see function, the name of your function together. There must not be space. Okay, the name of your function, open bracket, close bracket, then the square bracket, the block. So I can alert that to say, okay, alert, or anything I want to write, I can write it inside. But for now, we just want to show alert. So alert, you open and close bracket. I can put my what they call it, the inverted comma, right? And I can write my message. Say, okay, see you there. You can write as many functions as you like in a web page, all right? But only the ones you call execute. All right. See this name of function. What you will see now, this web, if I load it, is see you there. You're not going to see you are welcome. But I do not execute it. So let's try it and see. Uh, so you see you there. You're not going to see the other one. All right. So even if you have written a function, you need to call the function for it to execute. Another beautiful thing about functions is that you can call a function inside another function. All right. Remember, we mentioned what a variable is. So I can say, okay, let me do this as an example. Name of function. Let's say name of function let's give it a variable. Call it the message. Okay. You mark where I put in my variable. If I'm writing a function that is expecting a variable, don't forget what a variable is. It's a container for me to store data, okay, that I want to use to execute my code. All right. So it's like opening your hand to say, oh, give me something. All right. So anything you give to me is what I put in my mouth. So that's exactly what this is. So this message you're seeing here, this name of function is, well, name of function. Let me change the name so that it's easy for me to, let me call it, let me call it name. All right, name. Yeah. So this name function is expecting any form of whether string or any form of stuff that you want to give to it. That's this message. So take note that the syntax for writing a function that wants to ingest a variable or that is expecting a variable to execute is function, the name of the function. It must not be name, or don't forget, I said anything you like can be here. Then bracket open, you put in what you are expecting or what represents what you're expecting. All right, you close it and move on. You see it's about the same with this, but because this one is not expecting any variable, that's why you see inside here is blank. But the ones that are expecting variable inside is always going to hold the name that you want to represent the variable. So now I will change the alert to alert the variable. You see, I didn't have to type in a string, right? I just say anything they give to you, alert it out. That's what I'm telling this. So I'm going to call this function now into this function and give it what it should alert out. Remember, this one is expecting something. This guy is not expecting anything. All right. His own is, oh, I have something I want to give to this second function called name. So let name alert it out. All right. So let's come here and say, let's declare a variable. Let show message be equal to, let's give it a string. You are welcome to 2025. You close the line of code with semicolon. All right. So now we have given this variable show message this value. All right. So now we want to call this second function inside this first function. Well, all I will need to do is to now say name, take this show message and go and do whatever you like to do with it as you have proposed in your own function. I don't know if you get my message, yeah? So I've just called this second function inside this one. Okay, so a function can be called into a second function. That's what I was trying to just explain with all of this logic that I've been saying. All right? The function can be called into another one. Now, if I want to execute this code, it is this parent function I'm going to execute because this parent function is calling this automatically. All right, so I will put in the parent function there and let's see what we'll get on our screen. All right, you see, you are welcome to 2025. Okay, so that is about functions. Function is being able to group your logic into a single block of code that you can reuse it anywhere you want to use it. Whether you want to use it within a function, another function, or you want to just execute it directly on the code base. So we have explored what show message can be. Then let's also, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that the variables, you can change their value. So this same show message, and you declare variable only once. Okay, you don't get to do another let. As you have declared it as let show message, you can go ahead to assign any value. Now you can just be using it directly as show message equal to, let's call it change my message. Now, what is going to show is going to be the latest one. This first one is not going to show. All right. So where this is useful is if you have a case of maybe you want to show a status of something before something started processing. Let's say when they click, it should show pending first. Then something's executed before it now shows success. All right. So we'll call it status pending. Okay. Then we can change status to completed. Can change status to completed. All right. So you can see that variables can change their value at any time. Okay. Let me alert them, both of them. Okay. The same status here. We'll see name status. Alert status again. You'll see the difference. Okay. Um, Okay, you see pending. I click again, you see completed. All right, but it's just one variable that we use, status. So that confirms that variables are reusable. Okay, but let's try it out with constant and see. Uh, let's see constant status, even if we want to use status. Okay. I expect it should throw an error. You see what happened? It didn't reuse it. It didn't pop the second one. Supposed to have shown completed as well. Okay. But because it's a constant, it doesn't allow reassigning a value to it. So as the name implies, it's constant with only the first value that's passed with it. But if it were a variable, it will update it. It can update and take as much forms that you want it to take, or text or inputs. Okay, so this has just explained to us what variables, constant, and function is. Then the types of data I already explained for those that were not strings, numbers, boolean. Boolean is true or false. So let me do one example. Let's use constant. Okay, it can be false, constant, let me make a statement with it. Though you might not need to bother about making statements now, or I'll show you how to do that later. Let's make some if statement. All right. If status is false, alert this is not true. Okay. Else, as if it is true, alert this is true. Okay. I think this functionality, I think I need to take it to this name for here so that it's here that the logic should happen. I'll change this to status. So it's status that is expecting now. After this, I will then take us to the place I was talking about, how we can now make a calculator using this understanding. All right. So in our primary function, let's pass the status of false. Let's see what it's going to display. This is a condition, it's called conditional statement, if and else. Okay. If something, do this, else, that's if it's the opposite, do that. If you see here, I put a what do you call it? Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark means if not. Okay, so because status is false, usually if I'm leaving it as if status, what I'm saying is if it is true. Okay, but if I put exclamation mark, it's to go the opposite. So it's if it is false. All right, so let me just save and see. We are passing false now, so the message we're expecting should be false. All right. Okay, this is not true. So it means it got the false thing that was there. So if I change status to true, okay, and refresh, let's see what's going to do. Say that, so this is true. Okay, so it's executing based on what we have passed. All these are the various data types, strings, numbers, and Boolean, the most basic or most frequently used data types. Now, having said all of this on function, let's now relate it with our web, okay, what we have been working on. There is what the JavaScript recognizes as document, this entire web code that we have, HTML code. The way it sees it is like a hierarchy, okay, a document. It sees it as a document in a hierarchy. And of course, if you check HTML, you see that it's in a hierarchy. All right. So the way to identify each element on the HTML is what we'll be looking at. Example is every button on your HTML, for example, should have maybe an ID or a class. Or if you want all the buttons inside the HTML to behave alike, then you can use this. But what this code simply means, let me copy it to the VS Code. What the code simply means is look through this my HTML, all right? Look for elements that are button. Though for this one is the first one that is going to take the first button. I will explain to you why to take the first button. Okay, you take the first button, then add event listener. Listen whether that button is clicked on. So once they clicked on the button, execute this function, which is alert. So let me copy it to our VS Code and practicalize it. I will leave this first two function that we wrote. Let me comment this one out. Let me format this a bit, right? Let's format this also. Fine. So here we are. We are saying look through my HTML. Query selector is look for button. All right. Once there is a click, this add event listener is what is now listening for. If there's a click on button, then execute this function. Okay, the function is to alert button click. All right. So let me scroll up and introduce button on this. I don't think we have any button. All right. Let me put it inside this form. Let's say button is just open and close, just like we have with the other HTML stuff. So I can write a button and write submit here. Okay. Let me check on our page that the button is showing. Okay, so see the button here. All right. So let's go back and look at our JavaScript. In our JavaScript, we are telling the system, check for the button anywhere there's button. But like I said earlier, this very query selector, it will, if there are 10 buttons on this website, it's going to work for only the first, because we are telling it, like I said, it looks as a website or HTML in hierarchy, right? And query selector can only execute on one. The query selector all will make sure it happens on every button on the page, all right? So I will still go with just query selector for now. So it's going to execute on the first button. So let's try it out and see. We have added the listener click. So whenever you click, alert that button has been clicked. Right? Let me refresh that. Click. You see that? It tells you the button has been clicked. Okay, so this can be useful for so many other things, like the calculator we are going to do about now. When this time cuts off, I'm going to start up a new one. So don't worry. So that we'll do both the calculator and everything. But let's do this quickly and see if I choose to remove this alert, and let's make it let's assign a value. Let's assign a value to maybe any of the input things we have there. Yeah, let's assign a value to any input. Just a minute. Let me look for one to capture. All right. Let my ID. Okay, let's assign it to maybe an H1. Let me create it one H1 under the button.